going to call tonight's Corcoran Planning Commission meeting, March 6, 2025, to order. I'm going to take attendance, so I'm going to start Commissioner Lind.
Here.
Commissioner Kazaki.
Here.
Commissioner Hargreaves.
Here.
And Drummond is here. And I invite you to stand and say the Pledge of Allegiance with me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, and then the first order of business is to ask any of the commissioners or staff if they would like to make any amendments to tonight's agenda.
Staff does not have any changes, Madam Chair.
Okay, and then I will make a motion to approve tonight's agenda.
Oh, second.
All those in favor? Say aye.
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 Aye. Anyone opposed? Okay, so now we're going to move on to the open forum portion of the meeting. And because we have a lot of people here tonight, I'm just going to explain what the open forum is. Open forum is the opportunity for anyone in the public to address the members of the commission for items not on the agenda. It's an opportunity to be heard but not debate an issue. So if there's anyone who is here who would like to speak on an item that is not on the agenda, I'll ask if we have any cards for items not on the agenda.
Madam Chair, we do not have any cards not on the agenda.
Okay. We would invite those who want to make a comment to come up to the podium. It's not really an opportunity for a conversation or a back and forth, but it is an opportunity to be heard. So if there's anyone who came here tonight who is speaking to an item not on the agenda, I'm going to give you a second to stand up and approach the podium. Okay, and at this point in time, we are going to move on then to our new business. And each of the new business items tonight is a public comment opportunity. So I'm just going to go over the rules of,
Minutes?
Oh, meeting minutes.
Okay.
Yep. Thank you. All right, first we're going to approve our meeting minutes from February 6, 2025, asking any of the commissioners if there are any changes or things that you need to note. Nope. Okay. Someone want to make a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes.
I'll second it.
All those in favor? Aye. Anyone opposed? No. Thank you very much. Okay, now we're moving on to new business. We're all just eager to get there. But we have 4 items tonight, and each one of them is a public hearing. So I'm just going to go over the basic rules of decorum just so that we can be respectful, be heard, and also sort of be respectful of the time and the clock. So public comments are limited to in-person comments. However, if you submitted comments prior to the meeting, those have been turned over to the commission. They were included in the staff report. So if you sent an email or sent a letter, we have received those comments. Speakers who have filled out a card are going to be given priority to speak at the podium first. We'll call them up one by one. If you did not fill out a comment card, you will have an opportunity to approach the podium after all of the comment cards have been gone through. We are going to try to keep everybody to a strict 5-minute timeline, and that's just because even if we have 10 people on one issue, we're looking at an hour of comments before we can get through the discussion. And again, there's 4 items on the agenda tonight. So if you hear someone approach the podium and they go through and their reasons are things that you agree with, you're welcome to come to the podium and say, I agree with all of those comments. You don't have to repeat them. If you have something new, feel free to shed light on that new issue or idea, but we do assure you that we take all of the comments real seriously. So with that being said, and if I haven't forgotten anything, we're going to begin the public hearing for the Quick Trip preliminary plat, site plan, conditional use permit, and variance, and we begin with a staff report. So there's a TV back here, one here, and I believe one in the overflow as well.
Thanks,
Natalie.
Thanks, Madam Chair. So the first item tonight is Quick Trip. The applicant itself is Quick Trip, and they're requesting approval of a land use application that involves 3 existing properties at the northwest corner of County Road 30 and County Road 101. It includes the Mama G's restaurant site here at 9705 County Road 101, Currently, all three properties are owned by Mama G's Properties. And then the land use application has several components, including a preliminary plat to consolidate a platted lot, which is the northernmost lot, an unplatted lot, which is the northernmost lot, with a platted lot, which is the middle lot. So this will be consolidated, and then there's going to be a fairly significant access change to Mama G's, because they will close these two existing accesses. A new public road will be constructed as part of the project, which would wrap around and provide access to Mama G's on their northwest corner. And then there will be a shared access on the shared property line that'll be right in, right out on County Road 101. So additionally, there'll be a conditional use permit for a motor fuel station and a car wash, site plan approval, which includes parking changes to Mama G's, and then 3 variance requests that would be for the Mama G's restaurant site, including a reduced building setback from County Road 101, a reduced parking setback from County Road 101, and a request to defer connecting to Corcoran Municipal Sewer and Water. So just for a little bit of context, Mama G's was established in 1968, according to their website. The Mama G plat was approved in 1992. There was a variance granted in 1994, which reduced the required front yard setback at 60 feet down to 52 feet to allow an expansion at that time. Additionally, the city of Corcoran entered into an agreement with Maple Grove in 1998, which allowed Mama G's to be served by the Maple Grove municipal utilities. Corcoran did not have or really contemplate municipal utilities at that time. As far as the zoning for the properties, all 3 properties are currently zoned community commercial C2. This district is intended to provide for a variety of retail and service businesses serving the region, which are oriented towards motorists and require high volumes of traffic and visibility from major roads. It's also within our Northeast District area, subject to our Northeast District Plan, which has design guidelines as well. The properties are within the Phase 1 of the 2040 staging plan and are within our MUSA, our Metropolitan Urban Service Area, which means utilities are contemplated for the site. The southern property, again, is where the restaurant is, and the 2 existing lots will be consolidated for where Quick Trip is proposed to go. It's also worth noting that these properties are surrounded by a commercial district. So the C2 commercial district boundary is right here. So these 3 properties are kind of hugged by the C2 district, and then we also have a neighborhood commercial property to the north of that before we get into Bellwether, and then to immediately west of the C2 district is a mixed-use district, so it's anticipated to have residential as well as other commercial uses, and then across the street, across 101, is a residential area in Maple Grove. So again, there's several components, and the city's level of discretion does vary for each component. The preliminary plat is limited, our discretionary is limited to whether the proposed plat meets the standards outlined in our subdivision and zoning ordinances. If the plat meets these standards, the city must approve the preliminary plat. Then for the site plan, again, it is limited to whether the proposal meets the performance standards outlined in the city code. If the proposal meets these standards, the city must approve the site plan. For the CUP, it is based on whether the proposal meets the standards outlined in the city code, which includes any use-specific performance standards, as well as the general criteria that we have for reviewing CUPs. If it meets these standards, the city must approve the CUP. The city has a relatively high level of discretion in approving or denying a variance. The burden of proof is on the applicant to show the variance standards are satisfied. There are a couple of variances, and we'll walk through some of that. But for the preliminary plat, I'll give you an image right here. This results in 2 conforming lots. The only area of discretion really on the preliminary plat is the variance required for the building setback, because that will be reduced. The preliminary plat is showing a setback of 19.8 feet, where 60 is typically required with enhanced landscaping. Without landscaping, 100 feet is required. Currently, it's 52 feet setback from where the property line is, but additional right-of-way will be required as part of the plat. The Hennepin County did submit a letter that said that they would be open to a 55-foot half right-of-way with a 10-foot trail easement. Staff is requiring that Quick Trip revise their plat so that we take advantage of that flexibility, which means the building setback proposed would be 29.8 feet, just to give that little bit more space. I think a trail allows for a bit of separation from the street, whereas having that be right-of-way could potentially have less flexibility in the future because that becomes Hennepin County's right-of-way.
You mean Mama G's, right? Correct?
Well, it would be for both Quick Trip and Mama
Gotcha,
G's,
okay.
where we're proposing that.
Sorry.
But yes, the setback would be Mama G's, yes. That there would not be no setback variance granted to Quick Trip as currently proposed. That was really the biggest area of discretion with the preliminary plat. So staff is recommending approval of the preliminary plat. If the variance were to not be approved, then they would have to revise the plat to essentially relocate the restaurant so that it complies with the setback. The variance of a 52 setback would still be applicable. There was no time limit or condition granted to that, so they could theoretically move it'd be a lot, but they could move the building to 52 feet to comply with the variance they were granted previously. Conditional use permit, that's really the bulk of our discussion tonight and how that fits. So there's two conditional use permits. We have the car wash and we have the motor fuel station. For the conditional use permit, it's important to understand that conditional uses are allowed uses within the district. When the city developed the district standards, they said that motor fuel stations and car washes could be allowed uses, but they wanted to have an additional level of review for a CUP, which allows for additional performance standards to be added as outlined in our code, and it also allows for the city to add stipulations in order to ensure that the site where the use is proposed can fit within the context of the surrounding area. For the motor fuel station, there are use-specific standards that are outlined in the C2 district. One of them being that the application has to identify the non-automotive merchandise sales area as compared to automotive merchandise sales. They did do this in their application. Most of the area is for the convenience store. Really only 270 square feet of that space is proposed for automotive merchandise. The rest, which is about 3,700 square feet, is for non-automotive merchandise. Additionally, they are proposing some exterior sales, including 2 ice chests right about here, 1 propane cage in the, on the east side of the building, and then additional merchandising under the main canopy. We do need Quick Trip to clarify a bit more what would be sold under the canopy, so we can add some more specific language to the resolution that will go in front of City Council, but that's a detail that we can work out with them over the next couple coming weeks. The second standard is that the off-street loading spaces and building access for delivery of goods shall be separate from customer parking and entrances and shall not conflict with customer vehicles and pedestrian movements. The loading zone is down here on the south side of the building, and then there is a car wash lane. Looking at the circulation plan, we do think that there needs to be an additional lane added to allow for two-way traffic. And then the car wash, should still allow for, the loading zone as proposed, it would be fine as long as we can make sure that the high queuing of the car wash, they consider that into their practices. So as long as, if they're saying that the scheduled deliveries will be at a certain time of day where it really wouldn't conflict with the car wash, it should be okay. Even if there is a slight conflict with the car wash queue, whoever's waiting in the loading zone would just have to wait until there's a break in there. It really doesn't create a conflict. It is separate from the parking. It's separate from the pedestrian movements on the site anticipated, and it is has a separate entrance. So it does comply with that, but there is some revisions that need to be made on the southern end of the site. The motor fuel facility shall be installed in accordance with state and city standards. Additional adequate space shall be provided to access gas pumps and to allow maneuverability around the pumps. Underground fuel storage tanks are positioned to allow adequate access by motor fuel transports. and unloading operations which do not conflict with circulation access. And fuel pumps shall be installed on pump islands. So the plans do comply with this. Staff is concerned about the 21.5 foot of width that's shown between the fuel pumps and is recommending this be increased to 24 feet and the plans be revised to accommodate that. So you can see here's 21.5. Theoretically, that should work. It's just going to be really tight fit, and we know in Corcoran that most people drive big cars. So we do want to see that increase to at least 24 feet. There does seem to be space on the site to accommodate that. And then there is plenty of leeway around the fuel canopy and drive aisle width to accommodate two-way traffic. We require drive aisles of 26 feet, and they're right now it's showing spaces of at least 37.5 feet to allow for maneuverability around the canopy. And the plan does show the fuel pumps will be installed on raised concrete islands. So again, some revisions required, but we do believe that they will be able to comply. And again, this kind of goes back to what I was trying to say before. The fuel storage tanks are probably a little too far north. Probably need to shift those a bit south so they're not conflicting with the circulation plan and the car wash. The circulation plan had trucks coming in basically on this road to the north and swinging down here to access these storage fuels before they utilize the right in, right out. And again, there's a car wash. They will need to add another lane to be able to comply with that standard, but there is space to do so. All buildings, canopies, and pump islands shall be located to comply with the minimum setback requirements of the zoning district. They do comply with the standard. There will be enhanced landscaping for the canopy, which has a setback of 90 feet, so 100 feet would be required. It can be reduced to 60 feet with additional landscaping. So that is shown on the landscaping plan, and they do comply. The canopy lighting for motor fuel station pumps shall be recessed or shielded to provide a 90-degree cutoff, and the illumination levels for pump islands shall not exceed 30-foot candles. So the lighting plan does seem to comply. However, there is a conflicting lighting standard later on in our code that says it must be recessed. It doesn't allow for shielded lights for motor fuel stations, so we just need more information to confirm that it'll be recessed lights on the canopy. They do have a note saying that the canopy lights are dimmed, I believe 60% in order to meet the 30-foot candle, so that would be an ongoing condition of approval that they would have to meet, that they can't be in excess of that, and they have to be, if we were to take a luminance measurements at the property line, they have to be meeting these candle requirements. But it is noted that as a condition of approval, and they do have a plan that does comply. Finally, litter control. They are responsible for litter control within 300 feet of the premises, and litter control is to occur on a daily basis. Trash receptacles must be provided at convenient locations on site to facilitate litter control. They did not include on the site plan specific locations. We're including a condition of approval that the site plan be revised to show the proposed locations, and we recommend locating a trash receptacle at each entrance and near the outdoor picnic tables that are shown on the plan. They're on the northwest side of the building. So as far as the conditional use permit, in summary for the Planning Commission, the biggest items of discretion was the proposed requirement to increase the width between fuel pumps from 21.5 feet to 24 feet. Thoughts on the location of the trash receptacles would also be helpful. And then there's a little bit more too. But the car wash also had two standards for the CUP. The site shall provide stacking space for the car wash, and they do have enough space to fit 7 to 10 cars depending on the size, the mix of the vehicles. And then again, the area also appears to conflict with the shown pathway for semi-trucks to access the fuel tanks, so they will need to add that additional lane to allow for two-way traffic. And then they will be able to comply with that standard. And then the exit from the car wash shall have a drainage system, which is subject to city approval and gives special consideration to the prevention of ice buildup during winter months. A drain is not identified at the exit in the site or floor plans provided for the car wash. A condition of approval is for the site plan and floor plan to be revised to reflect a drain in that area and for additional details to be provided to explain how the ice buildup will be managed. So that is handled as a condition of approval. They are expected to comply with the standard. And then we get into the general evaluation criteria for CUPs in general. They must comply with our comprehensive plan. Our 2040 comprehensive plan does support this use, and the CUP will support an established business at a viable location to meet the needs of the community and a larger region as envisioned in the C2 district. Additionally, we have our Northeast District Plan, which envisions this Northeast area to be a job creation zone, and the CUP is anticipated to create 35 to 40 new permanent jobs to the area. And it is in compliant with specifically goal number 3 of our 2040 comprehensive plan to create new land use opportunities to expand and diversify the city's tax base by encouraging new commercial development. The establishment, maintenance, or operation of the conditional use will promote and enhance the general public welfare and will not be detrimental to endanger the public health, safety, morals, or comfort. So the proposed CUP will promote and enhance the welfare of the general public, and that the surrounding public will have convenient access to fuel, food, and other basic necessities. Even though it is a motorist-focused use, the business will be accessible to those who choose to walk or use their bicycle, including there is a bicycle rack, and they do anticipate that as part of the narrative that people will be able to come to the site that aren't motorists, and they try to appeal to that. And then granting the CUP does not appear to be detrimental to endanger the public health, safety, morals, or comfort. Motor fuel stations are subject to strict state and federal regulations to ensure safety and environmental health. The building design proposed is primarily brick cladding, providing a high-quality aesthetic. The proposed lighting plan and conditions of approval confirm downward-facing LED lighting is proposed to reduce light pollution at the fuel canopy, and also that the overall lighting of the site does not exceed 1 foot candle as measured from the center lines of the public streets or the shared property line. The nearest residential home from the proposed car wash is approximately 400 to 450 feet away. The study completed by the applicant based on car washes at other quick trip locations provide data to support that the noise levels from the car wash will be within the allowable range per Minnesota pollution control standards. And the applicant's narrative explains they can install berms and fences to minimize noise from the car wash exit, as well as limit the time of day the car wash dryers are able to run within a wash cycle. And so a condition of approval is for these strategies to be implemented to ensure compliance with nighttime decibel levels and to minimize any external impacts. The narrative also explains outdoor speakers at the fuel pumps are no longer utilized. Each fuel pump has a built-in speaker that is only activated once the dispenser is in use. This allows noise to only be present at the dispenser that is in use to minimize what can be heard off-site. It also allows the volume to be regulated by the store controls, and guests can choose to mute the sound themselves if they don't want to be listening to it. So, and additionally, all the setbacks are met as required, and there is focus on landscaping at the perimeter of the site to further mitigate sound and light. The conditional use permit will not be injurious to the use and enjoyment of other property in the immediate vicinity. For the purposes already permitted, nor substantially diminish and impair property values within the neighborhood. So it is found that this standard can be met. The proposed use will provide a convenient option for surrounding properties to meet daily needs. It's very similar to the previous standard. The proposed architectural design is of high quality, and the light levels meet all requirements, and as well as the noise. And as discussed above, the site design and business model provide a number of strategies to mitigate noise from the site. The establishment of the conditional use will not impede the normal and orderly development and improvement of surrounding properties for uses permitted in the district. The conditional use will not impede the normal and orderly development. The development will result in a new roadway and bring utilities to the site that will allow for normal and orderly development to occur with the surrounding properties. Adequate public facilities and services are available or can be reasonably provided to accommodate the proposed use. The applicant is responsible for completing improvements that were identified in the feasibility study completed by the city engineering team. And so that includes a number of street improvements, and the applicant proactively worked with surrounding property owners to obtain necessary easements to make those feasible for the site. So again, that's that new local roadway that's being added. And then they will also be responsible for other facilities such as stormwater improvements to manage the site. The conditional use shall, in all the respects, conform to the applicable regulations of the district in which it is located. So they will conform to the applicable regulations in the C2 and the Northeast District. Several conditions of approval were added to the site plan and CUP resolution that goes over additional changes that need to be made. They will be expected to comply if a variance was not specifically granted. And then finally, the conditional use and site conforms to performance standards as specified by this chapter. Again, with the proposed conditions of approval, they would comply. So we get into the site plan. I think the biggest things with the site plan for the summary discussion items for the conditional use permit for the Planning Commission, in addition to some discussion on the increased width of the fuel pumps and the trash receptacles, are there additional mitigation strategies that weren't contemplated in the staff report that could be included to ensure the use will fit within the C2 district and the surrounding area? For the site plan, a lot of the areas will comply or will comply with reasonable conditions. More information is needed on some of the screening, and that's again handled as a condition of approval. The lighting also complies. For the building standards, just so we can get a picture here, we have brick cladding shown. They do need to provide some information to confirm it meets our 5/8 inch standard, or 5/8 inch thick standard, but that does look to comply. The metal roof would also comply. We just need a little bit more information regarding really the concealed fasteners, and then they should be able to comply with that standard. And that also includes the standards for our Northeast District plan. For parking is probably one of the bigger issues. Right now, their proposed plan, right to here, they have 52 parking stalls. The closest use in our code was for really for a car repair shop, but that was the closest use, and that resulted in a formula of coming back at 42 spaces. I did look at other uses according to the American Planning Association, other formulas for car washes, and that did seem to line up with other car washes, car washes, motor fuel stations, convenience stores, it seemed to line up. So they are showing 50, they need at least 42, actually they're showing 52. Really the biggest change here is they were missing the landscaping islands that are required in our Northeast District, so there will have to be some adjustments made to meet those minimum dimensions and planting areas. And so there might be that additional parking spaces are needed here, and it might be that, and it will be likely that this area will have to shift just a couple feet to the left in order to meet all the parking requirements. So that is the condition of approval. For the Mama G's site, right now they have 236 parking stalls between on their parking lot, and their parking lot does expand over the shared property line, and so they will have to bring that back and comply with setbacks. And there was confusion between the preliminary plat and the site plan. The site plan showed about 160 parking stalls. The preliminary plat showed 102. And when we do the formula for Mama G's, again, we have to kind of go based off of the most similar use in our table first, and that came back at a use of 100 and.
I think it was like 142. Yeah.
Thank you. 142 stalls are needed for Mama G's, and that was using probably it was using a very generous formula. I would say the more common formula was based off of 300 square feet of, basically it's that volleyball space that's driving it. And if we were to use that formula, the required parking would be 227 parking stalls. So right now, staff's proposing 142 stalls based off of the 1,000 square feet of recreational space, or one parking space for every 1,000 feet. I would say that that is an area of discretion that should be discussed if we believe that's enough parking for the site. Ultimately, it is the business owner's responsibility to manage their site so that they're not relying on overflow parking. There will be no parking allowed on the commercial street leading into the site. And another option would be that they reduce the volleyball. I also know that this is an existing business, and everybody loves the volleyball, so I don't want to be on record saying that they need to reduce it. But they do need to know that they are responsible for managing the site, and that parking is something they need to work through. Proposed, so as far as the rest of the parking plan, there is some concern with the shown drive aisle width, and especially, they're not gonna be able to rely on parking in the right of way, so that's an area that needs to get revised to match with how the preliminary plat has the new parking. So there are a number of conditions for the Mama G's parking plan, including the demo plan must reflect removing the parking lot from what will be right of way. A 5-foot separation from the trail easement is required for a 15-foot setback from the eastern property line, which is subject to the variance approval that we'll go over in a second. And portions of the parking lot that are in the right-of-way and trail easement or any other required setbacks must be demoed and restored with vegetation, which is to be reflected on the plans accordingly. Again, a minimum of 142 stalls must be provided, which will likely mean that they will have to expand their parking lot to the west. And any expansion of the parking lot would need to meet all the required minimum stall dimensions and other development standards such as the landscape islands in the Northeast District Plan. So I would say that is like one of the, really the biggest issues with the parking plan. Everything else did look fairly decent. It's just that there are conditions to work through some details, including for the proposed plantings need to be consistent with our Northeast District Plan, which does have a preferred tree list. There were a few species on there that were not identified on our preferred tree list that would need to get replaced. And then there's some additional screening that's required for the parking. For the signage, that is another area that, again, they'll be expected to comply. It's normal at this point to have very minimal signage details. That does typically get handled as part of our sign permit. But I did go over in the staff report that they will have to comply with our pylon standards, and there's some dimensions there, and that there is some logos shown on the canopy that would not be allowed per current ordinance. They would have to remove that. And then another area is they have not identified 3 resiliency options for Quick Trip that are required per a Northeast District Plan. So that would be part of the conditions. They have to identify and update plans to choose 3 as outlined. So that could be an electrical vehicle station, that could be xeriscaping, which is plantings that require minimal water, and something of those like. So they will have to identify 3 and update accordingly. For the 3 variances, again, these are all for Mama G's site. There will be a variance to allow reduced building setback from the front property line adjacent to a county road. So at this point, that would be 29.8 feet, with the condition that they revise their plans to allow for that 55-foot right-of-way with a 10-foot trail easement. Overall, city has been fairly lenient with existing structures, trying to work with them. We find that it's part of really the character of the area that these structures remain if they're in good condition. So the variance recommendation from staff is to recommend approval with the condition that the parking area between the building and the property line must be converted back to green space. Right now it's pavement. And the applicant must revise the landscaping plan to provide landscaping we have a flexibility clause that allows for a reduced setback, so they would need to abide by that to the extent that's possible. It is a kind of a small area, so maybe that has to be a little reduced, but let's get some overstory, understory, and some shrubs. And then redevelopment of the site would be expected to comply with all setbacks for the applicable zoning district as a condition of approval. The second variance is to allow reduced parking and drive aisle setback. So this is the existing building. So this area right here would need to be converted to green space. And then we have the reduced parking and drive aisle setback. Right now is showing from the new property line as small as 13 feet, which does not allow for 2-way traffic, and it is in a one-way parking lot. So that is concerning, and we would prefer to have that be a 26-foot drive aisle. So that's part of the conditions of approval for the parking plan. And as far as the setback, we're saying a 15-foot setback from the revised property line with a 55-foot half right-of-way. And that would allow for a 5-foot separation from the boundary of the trail. Keep in mind the trail would not necessarily go all the way up to that boundary. It would be more centrally located, partly in the right-of-way as well. So there would be more separation than 5 feet, but that would allow for about 10 feet of separation. And so as far as the conditions of approval for that variance, the applicant has to, really it's that 15-foot. And then again, redevelopment of the site will be expected to comply with the parking and drive aisle setback at that time. And it does need to be converted back to green space. We are not proposing additional landscaping like we would for the building because there really is no additional room for that landscaping in that area. The variance to defer a mandatory utility connection is recommended for denial by staff. The applicant did submit a narrative that explains their reasoning as why they think it's granted, and it's all logically sound. The reason why we, as staff, do not recommend approval is because of the practical difficulty component. We have had other businesses and entities within the city ask for a deferment, and that was not granted. And so there really isn't a condition of the lot that says that they should be granted that deferment. And then I'd also say it's not consistent with our comprehensive plan because the site is projected for utilities in stage 1. So those are the 2 main components for recommending denial. So those are the components. Again, staff recommends approval of the plat, approval of the conditional use permit and site plan, approval of the 2 setback variances, and recommends denial of the Mamaji of the deferment. So you have a lot in front of you, and you're able, just keep in mind that you are able to defer from the staff recommendation, but there are a lot of things that are intertwined. So depending on what is proposed, we'd have to keep in mind that we'd either have to add some conditions to the preliminary plats, or if we recommend denial of one component, we might not be able to recommend approval of another component. So it depends on where the conversation goes, and I'll be happy to help you through that.
Thank you, Natalie. So at this time, following the staff report, we will open the floor for the public hearing portion. So we are going to have Dwight or Natalie will let us know who has filled out comment cards related to this. And again, just a reminder that we are going to hold to a 5-minute time limit. And then if you have new comments, please make sure, like additional items, additional light you want to shed on the issue, make sure you take the opportunity to come up to the podium. But if someone has already shared your thoughts and feelings, you are welcome to just agree. So at this point in time, who do we have for the public hearing?
The agenda item number isn't filled out, but I'll call Kim Hayden. Is that, do you want to speak on this item? Okay.
And then if you could come up to the podium and state your name and address, and that's just for the record, so.
Well, good evening, everyone. My name is Kim Hayden. I live at 10182 Ironwood Court, which is in the Bellwether area. So, I know that Natalie went over this 19.8 foot variance or the 29.8. Can you bring a picture of that whole intersection up to show where the new path is going to go along with that street? Because the thing that I want to bring up is if we're going to make it, if we're going to take space to use that, we only have right turn lanes on the Maple Grove side of that intersection. We don't have right turn lanes on the Corcoran side. And I think that's almost a must. If you're gonna grab space anyway, you should have a right turn lane. Can you bring that up, that intersection at all?
Here's the plot.
Yeah, it doesn't show the intersection though. There it is. See, there's only right turn lanes on the Maple Grove side.
Too high.
From
Just-
30?
Pardon me?
Yeah, from 32 going north or going south.
No, that's right.
Okay, we're all gonna just refocus for 1 minute. So really, Kim has the opportunity to have the floor, and so it's really not a discussion. So we just wanna make sure
Okay.
that you have the
So-
opportunity. There won't be a lot of back and forth, but we definitely are listening.
Okay, so my concern is that as long as we're making modifications to that, we ought to incorporate the right turn lanes both on the north side and the south side of 30, okay? Okay, in your packet for the meeting, Quick Trip is requesting on page 9 of your packet that the operational hours will be 24 hours a day. Will they consider 6 to 10? That's a question. On page 13, Natalie, you discussed the canopy lighting to a certain extent. And the 30-foot candles is what's allowable. My question is, what is the illumination levels at the Quick Trip, which is on 81, just north of here? Because my opinion is that is way too high of illumination to be across the street from a residential area or in back of a residential area. Starting on page 27, you discussed the landscaping and the mitigation for noise and lighting that the landscaping could provide, and it's a recommendation that the landscaping is there. My opinion is that the landscaping is a requirement for this area, not a recommendation. And that the trees are not full-grown trees, but at least 4 to 6 inch trunks on the trees, because quite honestly, most people in Bellwether wouldn't live long enough to see any benefit to those if they're just
Wait a minute.
just small trees.
Party animals.
And then I did review the locations of the current Quick Trips in the North Metro. All the locations that I found are either on an interstate or on a 4-lane highway. This proposal is on a 2-lane highway with no plans for future expansion per Hennepin County. So the proposal, this proposal, which is, 700 plus cars, extra cars a day, plus the extra traffic from the 610 is going to create some issues with, which I do not think were addressed in this report. Okay, that's it for me.
Thank you, I appreciate. I forgot as well before we went to the cards, typically we do allow the applicant to have an opportunity. Is the applicant here tonight?
I'm here.
You're here.
You keep going.
I can keep going,
I can go
awesome,
after you.
okay, thank you so much,
Yeah.
appreciate it.
We don't have any other cards.
Okay.
So it's,
Okay.
I would like to approach the podium.
All right, so at this point in time, if you want to speak on the Quick Trip, you're welcome to come up to the podium. Just make sure you state your name and address into the microphone, and that you be respectful of the 5-minute time frame. But we don't have any more cards filled out. Go ahead.
My name is Sandy Robinson. I live at 9848 Alvarado Lane in the Delgani, which is 1 block off of 101. And tonight I've got a letter you've received, but I would like to read it from one of our other neighbors who just could not be here. She lives at 9841, which is right across the street from me, and her backyard is there, and I can see right between the buildings to 101. And her name is Susan Olson, and she asked if I could read this tonight so that people could just hear her thoughts. Is that okay? Okay. She said, "Thanks for the opportunity to express my concerns to the Planning Commission regarding the proposed project. I write in strong opposition of the proposed development of a Quick Trip motor fuel station and convenience store near the northwest corner of County Road 101 and County Road 30. Actually, it's mid-block, but it's my understanding the project consists of a large convenience store, motor fuel station with 10 gas pumps and 2 diesel pumps, an attached car wash. This facility would be a 7-day-a-week, 24 hours a day operation. Placing said commercial property at the proposed site is totally inappropriate and poses several disruptions and creates a huge negative impact on the homes nearby and the current traffic on 101. There already exist 2 established communities of residential homes very near the site, Delgani and Maple Grove across 101 from the site, and Bellwether, Del Webb community directly adjacent to the site. To build a commercial property in the midst of homes is completely inappropriate. The 7-day-a-week, 24 hours a day operation of a Quick Trip would be a huge disruption to said communities. This 24/7 level of ongoing activity, noise of vehicles and diesel trucks, added traffic in and out, and bright lights shining all day and night into our homes would be beyond disruptive. I respectfully ask you, members of the Planning Commission, are likely homeowners as well in communities such as ours. Please ask yourself, is this something you would like in your backyard? Traffic on 101 Brockton is already at an all-time high. Adding this 24/7 commercial property with another access in and out on County Road 101 would add to an already higher than ever level of traffic, making all access points more vulnerable to accidents. From the corner of County Road 30 going north on 101 to 101st Avenue, which is a very small stretch, there were already in-out access points as follows. Mama G's to the west, Bellwether to the west, in and out at 100th Avenue, and Mama G's has 2 in and outs. and Delgani to the east on 100th Avenue, and in and out on 101st Avenue to the east. Adding yet another in-out access on County Road 101 to the proposed development directly between these areas will not only add to the congestion, impede traffic, but likely make the areas much more vulnerable to accidents as vehicles maneuver in and out into County Road 101. I like Quick Trip as much as the next, but simply cannot support placing such facility at the proposed site. Surely there are much better suited land options for building a Quick Trip in Corcoran, likely not far from the proposed site. There are appropriate for commercial property. Do not create multiple hardships for existing communities, homeowners, or have a negative impact on communities and on the traffic. I appreciate the opportunity to express my concerns and strongly encourage the Planning Commission and City Council of Corcoran to give very serious, thoughtful, and respectful consideration to the concerns expressed and those of others in opposition to the proposal, to not approve the request by Quick Trip at this site and seek out a more appropriate site for such property. Thank you so much for your consideration. And like Kim said, on 101, it's only a 2-lane, it's not really a highway, but the shoulders are barely there, but it's only a 2-lane road. And right now, it's sometimes extremely hard to get out at one of our only exits out of Delgani. And then 30 is supposed to have been the straight-through corridor for Wright County, the way they're going to be doing it. And yet, they've not put in the roundabout, they've put in a stoplight just up from 101 to the east, which is going to really congest traffic and whatever before it gets to 610. So what happens when they decide to expand 101, widen it? Then what happens to their front of their property, to the back of ours? there's gonna be a huge mess there. I mean, there are some other areas, just a mile over, 116 has got 3 open corners for commercial use and better access in and out. So it's just a thought.
Thank
But
you.
thank you for allowing me to read this.
I appreciate it, and I do want you to know that she did actually submit it, so we did
Yes.
get that as well. So just really want to verify with all of you that if you submitted
Well, I
letters,
wanted to make sure that
Yeah.
it wasn't mine either, but
Yep.
they hadn't heard it.
appreciate it.
Thank you.
Okay, is there anyone else? Okay, state your name and address for the record, please. And I don't want to be rude to interrupt, but we are keeping track of the time because this is still just our first agenda item. So I'll just, if we get to that time, 5 minute, I'll kind of try to look at you, or maybe I'll give you a wave or something. Okay, thank you.
So, I'm Craig Mattson, I live at 10174 Ironwood Court in the Bellwether community. And I heard that the applicant, Quick Trip, has met presumably most of the requirements that Corcoran has put out in front of them to build a Quick Trip. And that's all well and good, but I think there's many of the aesthetic things that really need to be considered. A couple of which have been already brought up with the traffic, the noise, and the light, as well as putting a fuel stop in a neighborhood that already exists. We've already heard from the 2 adjoining neighborhoods that this is a major concern, when in fact Corcoran has opportunities to put commercial fuel stations in other areas, major intersections that don't have adjoining residential areas. So that's my comments. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who wants to mention something that hasn't already been mentioned related to the Quick Trip project? Please remember to just state your name and address for the record. Thank you.
My name's Kurt Diebold. I'm with Mama G's. And some of the history that we had up there, Natalie, was 1964. Mama G's was founded. Quick version of that, we took over in 1998, immediately met a big fire. In 1999, 2000 was the fire. Demolished the building. We've been operating under conditional use permit. The city at that time granted us a conditional use permit to bring back a much smaller building. That building was originally 14,700 square feet when we bought it in 1998. And a couple things to address some of the neighbors' concerns is and one of them is the traffic, and I believe we had many long meetings with the county on, and we did a traffic study that I believe, I don't really know the technical outcome of that, but I believe if some of that was maybe shared with some of the local community that's in the neighborhood. I also, as the first gentleman said, I also am a Quick Trip fan and utilize one often. I see them all the time on 2-lane highways. Those are the ones I frequent. I very rarely see them on 4-lane highway. I frequent the one in Blaine that's in a neighborhood. So I think where Quick Trip is going, and I understand some of the concerns, and I also wanted to point out to Natalie's point about the water hookup in denying that request for a variance for the water utility hookup. In 1998, when I was approached by the then owner to purchase the property, he came to me and he said, "Hey, will you buy this property?" At that time, we went all in, but I came to the city of Corcoran first. And before I agreed to buy it, and I asked, when is city sewer and water coming to the property? Do you have any idea? And at that time, I was told it was gonna be 2 years till the hookup came, and possibly 5 years to get the interceptor, the big interceptor, and then possibly 5 years to get it to the property. And that was 25 years ago. So we've waited 25 years to hook up. We want to hook up to sewer and water. The only problem is I also want to take down the building that we were issued a conditional use permit for in the year 2000 that needs to be revamped. That whole corner needs to be revamped. you've got a commitment from Mama G's. Quick Trip was the first step of that, getting Quick Trip on the north side of that, so we could conform around Quick Trips and, you know, the ins and the outs, and I think we've worked with city staff and with the county, which was the first step to get rid of the egresses in and out, because it's a problem. It's a problem now, where they are. So we've succumbed to the fact that we're gonna go up to utilize our spot, whatever our spot does become, because it won't be 6 volleyball courts and Mama G's as we know it now, once Quick Trip gets done with theirs. So I would ask for some patience and a promise from us that we'll work closely with city staff and P&Z department in developing what's right there. And there was one other point. The parking. So where the parking overlays, I think that aerial view you have of that, because when and I wasn't sure I understood, so I may be speaking out of school, but the two lots that total 5 acres, the big one's 3, the most north one, the middle one's 2, and then Mama G's is 5. There's a total of 10 acres there. So on 5 acres of land with a 3,000 square foot building, I would sure think we could make you guys and the neighbors happy with a parking requirement, whatever that might be. We have plenty of land to park cars. And the last point was that those lights for Mama G's would, you know, we shut ours off at 10, 11 o'clock when volleyball's over, but sometimes we get a neighbor calling saying, hey, your lights are, you know, it's a volleyball court. And I see Quick Trip's lights being much less than the volleyball lights. And when we do develop said property, I understand there's gonna be some conforming, some things we're gonna have to change in our course of business. And that's kind of it. Thank you guys for coming, and thank you guys for listening.
Thank you. Okay, at this point in time, I think that we will close the public hearing for the agenda item Quick Trip, and then we'll begin the commission discussion and recommendation.
Applicant wants to.
Oh, do you, yeah, okay,
My time now?
absolutely.
As the applicant, you actually do not have to speak during the public, you can speak after the public hearing, yep.
So if you don't mind, if we close and then you can go.
Go
Okay,
for it.
perfect. So does somebody want to make a motion to close the public hearing?
I'll make a motion.
Okay, I'll second. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? No. Okay, all right, go ahead, sir.
Okay, so name, address. Name is Dean George. Address is 1626 Oak Street, La Crosse, Wisconsin, 54602. Thanks for having us here. Little background on how we got to this point in time. I first met Ann and the Midnight Group. We entered into a contract in May of 2021 to try and purchase this land. So we were met at that time with a moratorium and then a feasibility study that needed to be conducted, so the city could figure out what's happening with utilities, what's happening with access, what's happening with adjacent land uses. So we sat through the feasibility period and the moratorium period. The results of the feasibility study, we provided trip generation numbers to Hennepin County so they could see the impact of a potential Quick Trip convenience store at this location. They did make or provide a comment letter asking us to provide some turn lanes and some road improvements on 101. So the access, I think, is going to be deemed an upgrade. We're pushing Ann has volunteered to close both access points that currently service the bar, and they're both being slid farther from the intersection, which is deemed by Hennepin County to be a safety improvement to the area. So I think the access, as they see it, will be better in the future than now. This notion that we should locate our store on a different intersection doesn't really work for our business. We have to capitalize on passerby trips. It's the nature of convenience stores. It's a convenient run business. That's why we picked this area. We like the growth, we like the population, we like the fact that the zoning is proper to allow a use like ours. There's just a lot of factors being at this location that we find very appealing. There's a lot of work to be done on this site. There's ultimate water lines, there's ultimate sewer lines, there's ultimate road infrastructure that Quick Trip is volunteering to perform, which we think will help spur the development for the rest of the land in the area and creating a much greater sense of community in this particular area. If we can kind of talk about some of the elements that were discussed in Natalie's planning report. Natalie, nice job on the planning report. I know we've had a lot of back and forth on almost all of that. I don't know where you guys want to start on kind of what was discussed. We can figure out what we want to do on this 55 and 10 or 65-foot right of way. If you want us to go to 55 and 10, we can do that. So we can revise that plan. We agree there's space on the south of those tanks to create two-way traffic flow. We can even look at shifting the entire building back to kind of hit some of that setback out front for you guys parking. So there is a possibility we can accommodate most of those requests. What we don't want to do is separate the fuel pump islands out any farther. 21.5 feet is our standard. We've built probably 550 or 600 stores at 21.5 feet. We haven't had complaints. It works. The wider you get, the more cars you get keep thinking they can drive through the middle, which is why it's 21.5 feet. That is our standard pump configuration. We would appreciate it if we could keep it like that. So consideration there would be appreciated. Outdoor sales of merchandise, the one we didn't call out is salt under the pumps. So we have the propane chest, we have the ice chest, we have the salt out under the canopy. All the lighting is recessed. Like we said, we submitted a full photometric plan to the city of Corcoran with our civil design package. It doesn't show any light pollution off-site down to the foot candle. So there's not going to be this, your light is violating on adjacent land uses. You will probably be able to look out your windows and see our use, but it will not be illuminating your property. We don't have an issue with the Northeast design standards. We can look into options for retention basins, we can look into planting native species, and we can look into something else to hit the 3 resiliency options. We just have, as an overarching principle on this entire discussion, if you guys read through the resolutions, there's kind of a lot going on in the resolutions. So the resolutions are, I think each of them are between 20 and 30 comments that have an additional 20 and 30 sub-comments. And a lot of it intertwines our site with the Mama G site, and speaking as a representative of Quick Trip, that sometimes is concerning because we don't have control over some of the items in our conditional use permit approval. One of them being they have to maintain this parking requirement. The way it's written now, if that parking requirement were to fall short on their end, it would impact our permit. And that's something we would like to try and detangle if possible. And it might be a little bit more work between us and staff, but there's a lot of elements that are intertwined. I think Natalie and Kendra know that because it's been a long time to get to here. I think including Mama G's land with our plat kind of commingled most of this development. So I would be interested to hear your guys' thoughts on just the nature of the use and kind of potential options moving forward. Because we love the area, we want to be here. There's plenty of growth, there's plenty of traffic. There's obviously a need for something like this at this corner, given the traffic flow. So we would really like to be here.
2 miles away, there's one.
Okay, so just a review, because we do need to just maintain civil respect. So if you could keep your comments to yourself so that he can have his chance at the podium, he is wrapping up. And then side conversations too, it's super distracting when we're trying to hear. So just save those for when you are not in the chambers here. I'd appreciate that, thank you. So what we will typically do next, if you have felt like you've kind of gone through your presentation that you'd like to, is then we will ask the commissioners raise their questions that they have for staff. There's some discussion that goes back and forth, and if you could just be available for questions, if there are any specifically pertaining to you, that would be great. But feel free to finish up what your thought was, if you have anything else that you
I
wanted
think
to say.
I was just about ready to close report. Once we're jumping in. Like I said, I think the resolutions, I don't know if we can accept them as they are. I think there needs to be a lot of work done between us and staff to try and just disentangle some of the elements between us and Mama G's that are going to be listed in the same approval. And that's kind of our biggest concern at Quick Trip.
Great, thank you so much. Okay, we are going to begin our discussion so you guys can, we'll see who wants to begin. But as a point of clarification, just the CUP for the motor fuel and gas station use can be recommended, because that's what planning commission does, is we make a recommendation for approval or denial that goes on to city council, and then city council has this item show up on their agenda, and then they make a formal vote. But the CUP for the use of the motor fuel and gas station can be recommended for approval without, it's not contingent on the variance request for Mama G's.
So, Madam Chair, I would say we could work on detangling the site plan from the CUP, usually we do it together. But we could work on, you could recommend that it be handled separately if you wanted to, but I would say with the way the CUP and site plan and preliminary plat is written right now is if these variances were not approved, with the exception of the water, because that doesn't necessarily affect the site design as much as the setback variances, but if the setback variances could not be approved, then the site plans would need to be adjusted. But I think that'd be true even whether they're entangled or not.
Okay.
I think the parking requirement for Mama G's, while I understand that we're trying to separate it, Mama G's parking is impacted by the new site plan and conditional use permit, so I don't know exactly how we would disentangle that.
Okay.
It would be something that I have to work with Kendra and the applicant on.
Okay, and then, so for our purposes, as we look at these 4 things, obviously there's a resolution before us that includes all 4 of them. Is it helpful for us to go through, I mean, we've done it both ways on this commission over time. We've looked at each individual thing, but I feel like what I hear you saying is that they are all enmeshed enough that it is best to have a discussion and then decide where the discussion lends itself and go from there, right?
I agree.
Okay.
It may even be that the variances might be the easiest place to
To
start.
start.
And
Okay.
then we can go from there,
Perfect.
so.
Okay, so if we could begin with the variances, because it would give us an idea of where to go with the resolution as a whole. But who would like to begin?
I'll start just generally. The lane that wraps around the site, what is, why is that there? Why do we need that?
The new roadway, is that what
Yeah.
we're talking about? So because that, our Northeast District Plan, we have to, first of all, we are going to have limited access points to County Road 101 and County Road 30. So we do need a local roadway to be able to serve the rest of the property to the west, especially once we get into that mixed use area. So this is the start of that internal road network. And then that allows for the 2 accesses on Mama G's to be closed because they will have a full access that accesses the northwest corner of their parking lot. And then, so that's why it has to wrap around all the way down to Mama G's. But then it's also because it's kind of the first landing point to serve what is Greg Ebert's property that's immediately west, and part of it's commercial and part of it's mixed use.
That makes sense. There's a road that is part of Bellwether that begins to head south. That road is not gonna connect with this road, is it?
Eventually it will. It won't be
will.
a part of this project. It would be as, again, that Ebert piece, as that develops, that will eventually connect to this
Really?
road, yes.
That's interesting, I didn't know that. I'll just name my concerns. My concerns really boil down, and I think Kim did a real good job, is beginning with is the light pollution. I mean, the ambient light, I know we have a 0-foot candle at the property line, and I know that's requirement, but regardless, I think the ambient light from that station is gonna be significant, and it will affect the neighbors. And I was just wondering if there is anything else that we could do to mitigate that. And that is just addressing the people that live west of that station. I'm also concerned with the people that live east of that station, because the landscaping that's going in, I don't think is really gonna block any of that light. And I'm just curious if the city or the applicant had any conversations with the people in Maple Grove.
No.
No?
No.
Just thought that might be a prudent
So-
thing to do.
I guess the landscaping, the Maple Grove community it's the backyard of your townhomes, correct?
Correct.
With
with our living rooms and primary bedrooms facing 101.
That's fine, yeah. So there's privacy fence along everyone in your backyards already,
They're
which,
not high.
Okay, we're just gonna, we're gonna kibosh the back and forth, because we just, if you want to address it, because the commissioner asked you, but the public hearing portion of the agenda item is finished. So
I guess
if you want to answer his
the
question.
main point is there's not much we can do. The landscaping, the fencing, it's aimed to screen headlights, car lights. As far as building lights, there's not much we can do to soften that light to pollute, aside from providing the full photometric plan that says it's not polluting. So it's impossible to darken the building without just turning the lights completely off, I don't think.
I understand that, but I think Mr. Hayden made a comment about the caliber of trees. You know, that for the overstory trees, that could be increased, which I think would help mitigate some of that light pollution. So I just wanted to go through and list my
Sure,
concerns.
yeah.
So I'll continue with that.
Commissioner Hargreaves, did you want, I do have some like strategies that are used for ambient lighting reduction. Did you want me to go over that? Because I think there was a question in there as well. Were you asking, or do you want to continue forward with your comment?
Well, right now I'm just
Okay.
making my comments
All right, sounds good.
public. So one is the ambient light issue. The other is the noise. And I want to really make certain that we are understanding the noise impact of that station to the surrounding community. And so that's another concern. And then a final concern would be, so this station is being opened, being placed right around a large wetland area. And it's going to be a gas station. Are we doing anything special to prevent any trouble in the future with petroleum into the wetlands? That's a question.
Do you want me to,
I
okay.
guess. I'm sorry.
Okay, so the wetland, the nearest wetland is actually on the southwest corner of Mama G's. Just touches on that wetland boundary to the nearest wetland. The Quick Trip site is actually not, there is no wetlands on the border or immediately vicinity. It's actually a little further west on this site. I'm sure he's going to speak towards the precautions that they are required by several agencies to take to make sure that they aren't leaking petroleum.
I know there are, I understand that there are.
But I would say that actually this is an interesting site in that most sites have wetlands and the Quick Trip site has none. So that is actually probably one of the nice things about the natural features on the site is that it doesn't have any wetland impacts for what they're currently proposing. Go ahead.
So, and to speak to what you kind of touched on, the MPCA governs our fuel operation, so we have to have our tanks buried and double lined. We have to have the pond clay lined so it can be scraped out to prevent spillage into the groundwater. We have to have skimmers on all of our outlets to prevent oil and gas from separating into the water supply. So it's a very heavily regulated industry and a very heavily regulated component of our operation. And there's a lot of precautions in place to make sure that we don't dump fuel into the groundwater or to the wetland.
Okay, good. I think that's it for me.
Okay, did you want to circle back at some point in time to the strategies for combating ambient light that Natalie has, or do you just want to table that for right now and let other people bring up their thoughts or
Yeah, I
questions?
think we could table it.
Okay.
I'd like to get all those comments out.
Okay. All right, who would like to go next? Do you have questions?
Yes.
All right, Commissioner Lind.
I know sometimes we've done staff responding to questions that the public forum asks. I don't know, they're questions I also would ask, so maybe I'll ask them. The first one is, about traffic study not being included in the report, what the results of any, or maybe it wasn't, I missed it.
It was.
Okay.
The feasibility study was an attachment to the report, so there
Okay.
was, traffic study was evaluated, and recommendations were made. So, I could have made that clear in my staff presentation. I was trying to summarize where I could. So,
Yeah.
but yes, the applicant, as part of this project, on the county roads, a northbound turn lane at the north access point would be required, so that'd be on County Road 101. The need for southbound turn lanes will continue to be reviewed. Hennepin County, the comment letter that we have, the official comment letter we have, said that it could be that they wanted at both accesses into the site. It may be that they just need one. They didn't really give us a straight answer on that. But I think it's because they really need to continue their review of it. I would anticipate worst case scenario for the applicant is that they would need turn lanes at both accesses. It may be that they just need a right turn lane into where that new local street would be. I think that's, there's been some turnover with the Hennepin County, so that's why I think there's haven't gotten a clear answer on that. But they are required to comply with Hennepin County requirements, and their permitting with Hennepin County would also require that. And then the turn lanes and center median designs, so a raised concrete median on County Road 101 will be required for that, where the right-in, right-out is, to make sure that it is truly just a right-in, right-out, doesn't turn into someone trying to make a left-hand turn there, so that should help with some of the traffic as well. So yeah, that's the city's feasibility study results, and that was in conjunction with working with Hennepin County.
And then just to clarify for those who commented on it, County Road 30 and 101 are county roads, so the county gets to decide what road improvements are required or necessary, so that's not determined by the city, but it's helpful to understand that.
Mm-hmm. The question about reduction of hours, I don't know if there's a business model that exists where it's not a 24/7.
I don't know very many gas stations.
It's rare, very rare.
And I would say even the ones that maybe the convenience store is closed, the gas pumps are still accessible 24/7, so the lighting is still on, and that's true of even crossroads existing in the city, so.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Do we want to get into the Mama G's piece or not yet?
Especially if we're talking about the variances,
Yes.
yes, because we'd like to start with the variances, so
Okay.
please.
So in the narrative of the applicant, it talks about being a party in the agreement. And then in the staff report, it says they're not a party in the agreement. So can you shed a little light on the agreement between the city of Maple Grove about how the connection will work, no end date? Is Mama G's a party in that agreement or not?
So it's an agreement between the city, so we brought it to Maple Grove, just to understand their thoughts on it as well. As it's written, it's an agreement between the city of Corcoran and the city of Maple Grove. The city of Maple Grove basically said they have no preference on whether or not they continue to serve Mama G's or not. They'll leave it up to the city of Corcoran. But technically, Mama G's is not a party to the agreement. It's just an agreement about their site between the two cities and how it would be serviced with municipal services.
Okay. Because the narrative says no changes are happening to Mama G's, but then there was alluding to maybe there won't be a Mama G's is the way I interpreted it, but maybe that was wrong. So a little confused on how we make a decision on short term when we don't know long term, and it seems like I really don't know how to make a sound decision on that.
Well, and I was actually going to say, before we move on to any other thoughts you had on the other variances, I was going to chime in with a question, because I understand that the basis for the staff's recommendation is the other business owners, and I do think it's important that we maintain consistency. What I hear the Mama G's saying is that their intent is to remodel, and I would imagine that sort of some of the motivation is that it's just going to be cheaper overall to do remodeling all at the same time. So my question would be, the other businesses that wanted to defer hookup, were they facing imminent reconstruction plans at the time that they made a request?
I don't think so, no.
Okay, and so would it be reasonable potentially to land somewhere in the middle where we say, because the other piece of that is if you were told 20 years ago that you were gonna hook up, you should be in a position kind of ready to hook up, even though it took us a lot longer to get here. So I can see both sides, but something that I was considering is, I think we've done this in the past where we put a termination date. So we give out like 1 year, and I know that you said in the staff report that if there is some turnaround, it is entirely possible that something like that gets missed. But can it be attached to a permit? That's, I guess, the question. Do you know what I mean? No.
No, I would say if, so one of the things I want to point out too is this is actually the one variance that's really not in your purview. We still would like a
Okay.
recommendation, but I don't think we need to spend too much time
'Cause
on
it's
this
not up to
because
us
it's not in
ultimately.
the zoning and subdivision ordinance. It's
Sure.
from our public works chapter.
Okay.
And I didn't mention that in my presentation.
Which means their recommendation is really gonna trump ours anyway.
Well,
It's okay.
Well, actually, yeah, I mean,
Just say it.
potentially, I don't know, but I would say if there's a desire to grant the variance, then you just grant the variance. Having a time limit, we've
Okay.
really struggled enforcing time limits
Sure.
with other projects.
It's okay.
And so it ends up getting extended. So it's like if we want to grant the variance, then we grant the variance. And then but with the timeline that when they redevelop, they will be expected to connect. So that would be the so if that's what you desire, that would be the recommendation of the planning commission.
Okay, because I hear what you're saying, and I do feel like the other piece of that is that if they anticipated that 20 years ago they should be ready to hook up, then, they should be ready to hook up. So, so I don't know that that helps.
Let me address that because it'll help both of you understand.
Sure.
this. Mama G's 20 years ago had to shrink.
Yeah, sorry, they
I'm
will
sorry.
need it for notes, so if you could just be in
Emma.
the microphone, that'd be helpful.
3730 France Avenue, South Minneapolis. We could not, well, for the history, we have a service of a 4-inch line. When the fire happened, we couldn't rebuild a building because in order to build a new building, you have to sprinkler building and you need a 6-inch line. Maple Grove wouldn't give it. Corcoran didn't have it to give. Hence the reason we are what we are right now. Now we're,
Can you speak up more?
yes, now we're 20 years into the project. So to be ready to hook up, the reason we don't want to hook up is because we know we're going to redevelop. We know something new is there. So to spend all the money to hook up right now to a building that's going to be torn down and placed somewhere else on the site within a few years, I can't tie it to a time frame, but I can tie it to redevelopment. So it would have to happen upon a redevelopment. Can I say that that's in 2 years or 5 years? No. But I can say, right now, that's the plan. I mean, that building, as much as we love it, and it's rural, and it's old, and it's fun, and, you got the volleyball, it's a lot of work to maintain it. So that's the answer to the water issue and why we aren't ready to right now.
And one other quick comment I think is important, especially for the question you're asking, is that
Sorry, can you go up to the podium? That's my fault, but yeah, then it's helpful for notes.
When you look at and I think Dean touched on a little bit, and I'm a little bit confused as Mama G's owner as why we're here, and we have a lot of fun, nice neighbors here to discuss the Quick Trip. Why are we talking about Mama G's hooking up to a water line, whether it's pre-development or after development? Why are we talking about Mama G's parking? I'm having a hard time understanding why, if Quick Trip, if the planning and the people and the politicians and the folks and Quick Trip wants to come here, what does that have to do, anything to do with Mama G's? And any of the variances, any of the things that are required or going to be required for Mama G's when said development takes place, I understand that, I'm in support of that 1,000%. But right now, for what Ann had mentioned, we've been stranglehold for 20 years until Corcoran's had the water, Corcoran has the water, has the capability now. We want to hook up. Well, why would we go spend 200 grand hooking up to right now when next week next year the building might be down, and then we'll hook up everything. So that's a problem for me, and also for me to understand why we're discussing Mama G's when we're here for Quick Trip, because it's two separate things.
Except for it's all
It's
part
not.
of one site plan, so that's the reason why it's being discussed, because it is, the preliminary plat and the site plan are connected together, and that is a planning issue. So that's the reason it's
If they
coming
were
up.
different, would it be?
So the process for that, to disentangle them, would be real different.
Again, the parking is really, and then the change in access, it's not different, it's all part of the same project, so that's been communicated consistent.
What
with
if it
our
was,
process.
if that property was owned by somebody else? What would be happening at this meeting? If it was owned by Joe and Joe was trying to sell the Quick Trip and we owned the Mama G's site, what would then be happening?
I think the same thing would be happening because we have to deal with your parking, we have to deal with your access.
Because of that little parking, that little sliver that you see on the overhead,
And the access, your access is.
Off of
closed.
101.
Yes.
which we've agreed to give up.
Yes.
Well, I don't want to give those up, but we agreed to give up both those access points with the county. So, yeah.
Okay, so we are
So
going
that's
to, well, I would say if there's continued questions, then staff is available for follow-up. I hear that we shouldn't spend a ton of time on the water variance, so if we want to take a look at, like, I don't know if that helps you land one way or the other, just in terms of the great big picture, but if we could quickly touch on the other two variances and then any additional questions that people have. 'Cause this is, just a reminder, item 1. Do you have anything else that you would?
I have lots of more questions,
Go for
but
it.
I don't
Dig
know.
in and
Okay, if these are two not off of the specific subject, you guide me, okay? But, C2, commercial district. What other type of businesses would, I get that automotive, gas station, convenience store would happen. What other business types would we envision with that area?
So, Commissioner Lind, I would just add that we want to make sure that we're looking at the application in front of us.
Okay.
Just because they're not proposing another use that's allowed, that's not really a reason
Okay.
to base the denial of a recommendation for denial on a CUP. But basically, the district is meant to provide a variety of retail and service businesses that serve a larger region, and they're oriented towards motorists and require high volumes of traffic and visibility from major roads. This is one of our only C2 district areas in the entire city. So it's neighborhood commercial or kind of the smaller areas, and even in our neighborhood commercial, we allow for motor fuel stations and car washes. And then the C2, with the idea is it's supposed to allow for the larger region to be served. This corridor was identified because of the improvements coming from 610 in 94, that this would be the corridor that would serve the larger region and serve the motorists that are anticipated from those improvements. So as far as examples of some other uses, I include banks, bakery, daycare, civic buildings, department stores, grocery stores. There's an entire, like taverns, sporting goods, retail goods, restaurants.
Got it, okay.
So along those lines, and then we have other conditional uses, like automobile retail, commercial kennels, commercial recreation, entertainment. So hopefully that gives you an idea, but these are larger commercial uses in this district.
Thank you. I'll have more, but I'll just defer to someone else.
I'll go ahead. I understand Mama G's is owned by one owner, you guys, Quick Trip properties bought by you, okay? It's gotta be together because Mama G's has less parking now.
No, it's parking goes over the property line
It goes over the property
and
line.
access, yep.
I mean, and according to this, the site plan provides that there are currently 236 parking stalls at Mama G's. On page 24, during sporting events in the summer, parking lot is predominantly, if not fully utilized. So there's a lot of light, there's a lot of activity going on all summer long. Looks like the parking is diminished quite a bit, but again, that's you guys' issue to deal with. Just can't park on the street, can't park on any of these side streets that are created in the development either. I think the main issue is lighting, it's noise, it's fumes. I didn't hear that brought up, but I think I read it in one of the letters from one of the neighboring people. Diesel fumes, things like this, car fumes. I guess it is on two, as far as Corcoran's concerned, these are major roads. 30 and 101 are the major roads in our community, and it is a use that's allowed there. The CUP seems to be in compliance with it, and it will make some adjustments to come into full compliance, and it seems like you're able to. I don't know as I would want it in my backyard either, but I probably wouldn't want County Road 101 in my backyard either. I probably wouldn't want County Road 30 in my front yard. But these are two major roads. These roads have always been there. The development came after that. I think if anything that the developer can do to mitigate that, I know you guys have a fence that's probably not as high as would block certain light, certain noise. Pine trees, I guess, are the best block because they're gonna be there all winter, they're gonna be there all summer, they grow fast. This area here on the landscape plan, I don't know if you could bring it up, Natalie, but it doesn't really show a whole lot right there on that eastern property line, but it looks like there's probably some room there for some larger trees. And
Trying to pull it up.
again, you know, there's certain evergreens that are pretty good at blocking, you know.
Well, and the landscaping standard says it has to be at 80% opacity, correct?
Yeah.
For anything that is screened,
For the drive-through lanes.
for the drive-through lanes, where the
not- or
headlights would go.
The loading zone, I'm sorry. not
Where
headlights.
headlights would go.
And then, yeah, for the headlights, they have to be screened to 3 to 4 feet for the headlights, so that's a slight, actually, the parking along 101 right now, or nearest 101, is actually showing that pretty well. It's really just the northern parking area
Where there could
that would require. I do think that, I believe these might be coniferous trees, I'm trying to remember, try to recall, but we could certainly require coniferous trees. I do think you want to mix.
Yeah, I agree.
But I think that could be something that we formalize, that's what we want to see.
I think if there's room there, the better screening that you can do, and I do notice on the side of Bellwether too, there is quite a nice area there with trees and fence, and those are getting larger, so that'll help too.
Even, if you don't mind.
No, go ahead.
Even if you added additional landscaping to the north and west of that access road, I mean, it's almost like a double barrier
Yeah.
of,
So we won't be able to require them to put, this is gonna be developed, and we don't know what's gonna be developed there, and this isn't their property. So there's an easement that they've secured with Ebert to allow for part of the road to be located on the property. But I would say as far as requiring plantings, they would likely not remain as that continues to develop, because we don't know what's coming up with that. So I would say if we want permanent landscaping, we would want to focus on within the bounds of the Quick Trip site.
And when that is developed, it's very possible that that will require some kind of buffer.
Yeah, we'll deal with that as that comes in, yeah.
Yeah, I think it looks like there's a fair amount of space there to give a better screen, and I think that would be my recommendation, just to try to screen that as much as possible, because I mean, I can empathize with the neighborhood. I mean, you don't want headlights in your bedroom windows at night.
well, yeah. I mean,
But
I'm
you
not,
may get them anyways. is
yeah,
all.
I'm not sure how much leeway you have with the building, if, you know, how much you can move it east or west, but again, you
The
know,
Quick Trip.
yeah, the building itself. But
Yep.
again, you know, the people who live across 101, they don't, I mean, it doesn't look like there's a whole lot of landscaping that is blocking the lights from those folks, so.
So we could, what I'm hearing is a desire to have a condition of approval that additional landscaping be provided along the north and east boundaries,
And
to
west.
have more, and to include more needle trees, I'm forgetting which one that is at the moment.
Evergreens.
Thank you.
Except for the
Evergreen.
thing I'm gonna say with that, you
Yeah.
guys, is that they are not doing well in the current climate. And if they die after their development is done, there's not a requirement to put it back in. So
Well, the conditional use permit, I think we
Would
could theoretically.
were to die.
Yeah, we could put something in there, yeah.
That would be good.
And trying to get whatever's the hardiest, and I don't know if there's any maintenance agreements with any of these types of trees you put on to kind of ensure that they don't die. I mean, and sometimes with salt spray and stuff from the road too, I've seen hedge-type evergreens
brown
put
out.
in, and then the salt just kills them every winter, so.
Okay, so if that is satisfactory, is there anything else that you would want to add I'm just trying to get us on to.
Yeah, I just wanna make a
Yep.
comment about the parking. I think it's gonna come down to timing, cause let's say in 2 summers, Mama G's is still rocking, we have volleyball, we have a quick trip. I just don't see any feasible way that there's gonna be enough parking, and you're gonna have people not able to park in the neighborhoods, not able to park on the street, but probably gonna go park in the neighborhoods. Unless I'm wrong in reading these numbers, I just do not see how it's gonna work.
Mama G's might have to do a special deal to get people to carpool, so I don't know, I don't know.
Like, that's where So
will
I don't
say-
feel comfortable like approving this concept when we know that that is a huge issue.
I think that is a fair component. I'm just, all I was trying to say is the business owner will be responsible for managing their site. So if they're saying that they're confident 160 stalls is something they can work with, and technically our formula, it is vague enough that that could work, but if you think that there should be more stalls as the planning commission, that is part of what's under discussion tonight.
So that is something that you could put in as a condition of approval.
I do see that the Quick Trip almost seems to have more parking than you would need people running.
Actually,
run out
I
to-
wondered that, and so then I Google searched the typical number of parking, and it's actually, that's like 42 to 50 is about the number of stalls that the average Quick Trip has.
But a lot of parking standards overdo it, and you have a lot of empty
Yeah.
spaces.
I will say, peak AM, peak PM, probably have 14 employees at our store, which is, they suck up 14 stalls, which is why we have, you see 42 to 52. Why did I come up here in the first place? Timing, you said timing. So,
Yeah.
this is probably another wrinkle. We're obviously we're going through all these adjustments right now. Not enough time for us to put it up in 2025. So we are hoping to start construction in July of 2026, which would trigger not having it open until summer of 2027. So the first summer where the volleyball courts will be rocking will be 2027. So it kind of gives Ann a 2-year window to look at what they want to do on their side.
Yep.
And another comment, Lindsay, too, on your parking concern, is that, as I stated this earlier too, we have 5 acres of land on that corner. We have the wetlands on
Yep.
on the outside of it, and that would be the south side of the
Yeah.
building. And I don't know how much acreage that
It's
accommodates,
6
but
or something.
let's say it's half an acre, I'm not real sure. But I can look all you in the eye and give you 100% confidence that with 5 acres of land and the volleyball courts, and will we be rocking on a hot summer Thursday night in 2025? There's still not a Quick Trip there.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, we will. We have plenty of parking in 5 acres. There will be nobody, and we as Mama G's, we can police that, to your point on carpooling, or something, whoever said that.
No,
But,
she's got the good ideas.
I don't know if we'd go that far, but where we would go is no one's gonna park in the neighborhoods, because if they'll have direct access to us, and we can help with, facilitate that, but I get 5 acres of land, I know what the codes, or and it's a hard thing for staff to put together, because there isn't a lot of things to compare to, where there's 6
Yep.
volleyball courts and a 3,000 square foot restaurant and bar. So how do you get the parking, numbers? So the 146 they're asking for, Greg, I mean, how many can we park out there at a time if we use the grass area? I think you're is staff referring to just the tarred area?
So,
That's correct. Yes.
Basically, it
Yeah, where the
goes to,
spots are straight.
1 week per season playoffs, I'm sorry.
Oh, no, it's okay. Can you go up to the mic is all I was gonna say.
Yeah.
If you,
And address the parking issue.
So the parking gets a little crazy when it comes to, let's just say it's spring playoffs, where we have to retain the teams for hours, not just come for 1 hour and leave. And basically, they park in the grass as it sits
Right.
on our property.
Because there's a
Never-
lot of,
never in the
there's a
rows.
fair amount of room to the west that is not wetland, right?
We don't have any wetland.
they don't have any
That's
wetland. The only
safeguard.
wetland is in that southeast
Just
corner.
the south.
But would
Okay,
that
yeah,
grass
there's a
area
lot of
exist?
area in the west.
well, that's what I'm saying. They would have to make a formal parking lot and expand it probably into that west area where they're having cars park. that would, to get the number of parking stalls. Right now, I'm showing after the right-of-way is removed, it's 102 parking stalls on the preliminary plat that's shown. So to get the additional, they're gonna have to expand that cart area to the west.
And may I say this, that in the future, we were literally planning on reducing it down to 4 courts, just because of the craziness.
Yep, and so, and if you were to reduce it down to the 4 courts, we would need an updated site plan showing that, but if that's something that you wanted factored in now, that would certainly help with the parking numbers, yes.
Okay. Thank you.
And Natalie, we can designate some more parking spots in the grass area. We can.
I am gonna let you guys finish this outside of the meeting, and handle the parking. If you feel like it's at least answered your question enough to be able to make a recommendation or, denial, like, I guess that's what I'm asking. Has it satisfied your,
Well, I guess I would just
Question
say
regarding
that
parking.
maybe the recommendation or condition or however we might want to phrase it is that there needs to be a discussion about future remodel and timing with Quick Trip development so that there's appropriate parking to accommodate both on this proposed site plan. Does that make sense?
do you want to add that in as a condition of, like, in the resolution? Because that feels just,
I don't think we can condition the approvals based on the future redevelopment
Yeah,
of the site.
that's true. Okay.
I think that if you feel there should be more parking, then that's something that we could adjust on the approvals. Yeah.
I also just feel like at this point in time, Mama G's has been around long enough that there's like a good faith they will figure it out
Yeah.
at this point in time. And so, unless, does anyone have anything? Otherwise, the things that we were asked specifically to talk about were the width between the pumps, any additional strategies needed to combat the ambient light, and trash receptacles. So if we could touch on those 3 issues, and then if you feel like you're at a place where we could make a motion, then that would be great. Okay.
One other thing regarding the light, are we thinking that we're gonna limit the hours of the car wash? I thought I heard that.
The car wash dryer can be limited. They said that they have done that in the past in the summer, so that is currently a condition of approval.
Okay, because
that will be done.
I think that would help,
Mhm.
so,
I think so too. Yeah.
10, 8 p.m. or something.
yeah.
I think that if 21 and a half feet is your standard between fuel pumps and that works without lots of door dings, then I say go with it, especially if I can understand you don't want people driving between. You'd rather have them drive around to find their parking spots. So I don't know if you entered that in as a condition.
I did, but I can
Can remove it. Trash receptacles, I would like to see one at the entrance to the car wash. So in the drive, because people who go in to get their car washed are taking all their trash, trying to dump it in there. I think having them near the picnic tables makes sense. I don't know so much about the entrances and exits into the parking lot. That feels like maybe that would be more flyaway trash.
That is not what I meant, so I apologize.
You meant entrances to the Quick Trip.
building.
Thank
Yeah,
you so
I
much.
apologize.
Oh, no, that was probably weird, and I just took it somewhere else. Okay, so those are thoughts regarding that. And then the additional thing would be if there were any additional strategies that someone wanted to either make a recommendation for regarding the ambient light. I do understand that this is a big change, and someone actually in this room once said that they were a change facilitator. He's sitting right there. And I think that that is a part of the process, is that we are in a city where lots of change is happening, and so how can we mitigate that change so that we are ready to accept it, but we also feel like it is done in the best way. So if anyone has any suggestions that they want to make towards that, or if we want to hear what Natalie was able to find and see if we want to make a recommendation or a condition of approval, that would be great. Otherwise, at this point in time, as everything stands, I would be ready to make a motion.
Didn't mean for my screen to be showing.
Okay.
So I just want to understand this, so the concerns that we have will be addressed in some manner or form, right?
Brought to the council.
So the council gets all of the notes from this. The council representative is sitting right there. They will get letters that they've received. So will they be received comments? Yes. Can we put them as a stipulation? That is up to the council to decide.
Oh.
So if there is something that you specifically want, for instance, I was ready to say 21 and a half feet between fuel pumps is fine. So then we're removing the condition of approval. If you want to make a condition of approval, then that's something that you need to recommend right now.
I would like to see added landscaping wherever we can to mitigate.
To screen it.
So the best thing to do when making it a condition of approval is to be as specific as possible. Only for location and I think you got it with regards.
And we were talking about the west and north, correct?
And the east. And the
Oh,
east.
I'm sorry, that's
East
what I
and
meant,
north.
east
Yeah.
and north. We're
East,
talking about
north,
east
and west.
The reason that I would say west is a little overkill is that something's going to be
It's gonna be
developed.
developed,
Yeah,
yeah, I
west
don't
is
think we
Okay,
need
Yeah.
well, I mean,
The building shields the light to the east, to the west, from the lights.
I mean, it is already.
Because of where
Yeah,
it's
I would say
positioned.
east and north.
okay,
That's
that's
what I
fine,
meant
east and
to
north
say,
is
so I
fine. I
apologize.
just want additional landscaping. If you want me to come in and design it, I will be glad to come in and design it.
So on that note, it sounds like the commission is ready to make a motion, and so I will make that motion to approve the preliminary plat site plan CUP and the two variances. We will go ahead and follow staff's recommendation regarding the third variance for water hookup, knowing that ultimately someone who is more knowledgeable in the area will speak into the situation as well. With the removal of the condition for 24-foot pumps, and instead sticking with the 21.5 pump width between pumps, and then additional landscaping of coniferous trees in particular on the east and north side of the site.
Yes.
Question, can we do the Mama G's variance separately? Vote separately or not?
The thing is that the variances are tied to the site plan, and so if we're not doing the, if you have a different feeling regarding the variances, then that potentially changes the site plan. However,
Well-
this is what I'll say, there is a motion on the floor, so if there is someone who wants to second, we can vote, but if there is no one who wants to second, then the motion dies and somebody has to make a new motion. But I made a motion.
Oh. So what's your motion? Will you repeat?
Is it for
all three variances,
To
or you
review,
just
the
doing
motion is to recommend approval for the preliminary plat site plan CUP, the two variances for Mama G's, and then to follow the recommendation of staff for the third variances, which is to deny the delay in water hookup because Public Works will speak into that, unless you feel strongly a different way. Then we're going to remove the requirement to have 24-foot width between the fuel pumps, and we're gonna go to 21 and a half. And then we're going to add a condition of approval where there's increased landscaping of coniferous trees on the east side of the property line for Quick Trip and the north.
In the car wash receptacle at
Correct.
entrance of the car wash, trash receptacle.
So that's the motion as it
And
stands.
limit the operations of the.
That's already a condition
Okay,
of
that's
approval.
already, okay.
Yep, that staff made.
Okay.
So again, that motion is hanging out there.
So your motion's for everything, basically, with the
Correct.
staff
It's
recommended?
one motion with the additional added landscape
Um,
and the change in the fuel with pump.
I second.
Okay, all those in favor, say aye. Aye. Anyone opposed?
I am, for the reason that I think we should approve the variance for Mama G's.
So can she make it friendly?
I'm sorry, I was trying to get ahead of it and that's what, so.
Is that the
You weren't quick enough. You weren't quick enough,
Well,
Commissioner.
yeah, you're right, I wasn't, so.
No.
Anyway, it's
The
fine
question
still.
is, can she make it friendly?
I don't think at this point we can make it friendly. Yeah, I don't think we can.
I think it's
Voted.
fine.
So I think
It's
it's
okay.
fine, and then we will just say that the reasoning for the denial was that, was specific that you wanted to recommend approval of the third variance.
Correct.
That was
Okay,
kind of
and
out
so I
of our
think that's
hands
fine, we
anyways,
can
so.
forward that.
Okay. All right, and so then we're moving on to the second business, item of new business, which is the Brockton Business Park preliminary site plat and site plan. If you are exiting, if you could do so quietly, please, so that we can go on to the next item, that would be wonderful. Thank you all for coming tonight. Thank you for your time.
Thanks.
And we're gonna begin this item with a staff report as well. Okay, do you wanna, you just go ahead.
I'm just gonna.
Yeah, unless, okay.
Madam Chair, Commissioners, this next application is also a public hearing, but unlike the previous one, this is just a preliminary plat and site plan application. The city's discretion in both of those applications is limited to whether or not the application meets the standards in the city code. This is for Brockton Lane Business Park. Next slide. It's to create 2 industrial lots and 3 outlots from this 80-acre parcel. The 2 buildings total just over 500,000 square feet. This is on 101 in the northeast corner of the city, north of the Nelson trucking site, so just a little bit north of the project we were just talking about. Next slide. The property is guided and zoned light industrial. You can see on the right-hand side, that's the northeast district map. The arrow points to this property. The streets fade out a little bit, but you can see our master street plan on there. It is in the Metropolitan Urban Service Area, the MUSA, and it is subject to the Northeast District standards. An environmental assessment worksheet was completed for the site as required by Minnesota rules. A notice of decision for no need for EIS was adopted by the City Council on February 13th. There are natural resources on site as identified in our comprehensive plan, specifically related to wetlands and floodplain. There are also wooded areas on the site, but as you know, the city does not have a tree preservation ordinance. Next slide. This is the site plan. 101 is on the bottom of the screen for those watching. On the right side, that's the north side, there's a large wetland floodplain area. The north side is a new collector street that will connect 101 to the Stieg property, which is directly to the west. The Stieg property is a mix of mixed-use zoning as well as residential on the far west side. So this will provide a connection through the Stieg property and ultimately down to Stieg Road when that piece develops. On the south side is a local street. That is the current access to Nelson, just for context. So that driveway for Nelson will go away in the sense that it'll be upgraded to a new public street, and their curb cut onto that new public street will shift a little bit to the west as part of this project. In the center of the site are that's fine, you can go into that, thank you. In the center of the site, you see a shared truck court. There are 2 large office warehouse buildings. No tenants are identified at this time, which is not unusual for a project of this magnitude. The lot standards and building setbacks are all met for this project. It does comply with the site plan standards. The architecture for the building is included in the packet. It is a warehouse building, so the buildings have a 32-foot clear inside. The building's maximum height in this zoning district is 45 feet, and this will comply with that. The building has smooth finished concrete with metal accents. The materials do comply with the general zoning standards as well as the standards in the Northeast District. We do need some dimensions on the plans. I believe the buildings do comply with the ordinance standards that require breaking up the wall elevations to minimize the mass by using changes in colors, building articulation. We simply included a condition requiring those dimensions to be added to the architectural drawings before final plat. Additionally, the trash and recycling areas for the 2 buildings need to be shown on the plans to ensure compliance. It is my expectation that those are in the truck court, but we want to see those. Next slide. The screen always gets a little bit goofy on the colors. These were included in your packets, but this is the building elevations, lots of glass on the front and side elevations. You can see the roof line does have some articulation, and there are a mix of colors and materials to break up the face of the building. Next slide. Parking. The site does meet the minimum parking standards as outlined in our ordinance. There are 393 vehicle parking stalls between the 2 buildings. Those are screened by the required 3-foot berm with landscaping on top, so that's additional screening. There are 138 trailer parking stalls in the middle of the buildings, that central truck court zone. That is screened by an 8-foot landscaped berm, so it's a berm with landscaping on top. The 0 setback on the shared lot lines council meeting, there were some ordinance amendments. This does comply with that. There's a 0 setback, and in exchange, they must enter into a cross-access easement agreement for maintenance of that shared area, and requires them to reduce their impervious surface area from the 70% allowed to a maximum of 60% of the site. This is well below that. Parking bays interior to the truck parking zone. They are providing end cap landscaped islands as required, but we have waived the requirement for the landscaping islands inside of that zone. In exchange, green space to equal those islands must be added outside, and the trees that would have been in those islands must be added outside of the setbacks. And so the applicant's plans show that, but what I would like them to do is to provide the actual calculation in acreage to show that. I can, on a later slide, I can show you where that's happening. The green spaces there, they do need to add those trees back into the plan, though, that are missing. So there's a couple trees that'll be added. In that parking area, they do have EV charging stations. That is one of their resiliency options. So this is, I think, the first site in town that will have those. So next slide. Landscaping does generally comply. As you know, the Northeast District has standards that are different from the rest of the city. So we require native landscape materials to be used, and the applicant's plan does show that. There are a couple of shrubs that need to be tweaked, but that does comply. The buffer yard ordinance, which is a subsection of the landscape ordinance, indicates that a buffer yard D is required in the southwest corner. We talked about this with council during the concept plan. Given the distance between the existing residential and the existing vegetation around that wetland and the new vegetation that will be planted along the new street, we recommend waiving that additional buffer requirement. That will be an action for the council. Planning Commission does not that is not in the Planning Commission. That's specifically a council action, but I wanted to bring it to your attention. Next slide. So in this landscape zone, if you kind of look in here, there's green zone behind the street that increases the minimum setback requirement for parking. That's the area where they're making up some of the landscape island green space right at the entry to those to that back truck zone, so right in there. So they need to dimension that, but I feel confident just doing my very low-tech scaling that that's meeting that. They will need to add a couple of more trees, I think, to meet the minimum landscape requirements. Their landscape plan based it on a 500,000 square foot building, and in fact, it's 530 something. So there's a few more trees that'll need to get added into these green spaces. But if you look at this site plan, you can see there are spaces on adjacent to the road where additional landscaping can be accommodated. If you stay on this slide, or yeah, go to the next slide, sorry. This image was in the packet. This is a view from the wetland to the south. If you look in the upper left-hand corner, you can see where that view, where you're standing in that, at the edge of that wetland looking into the parking lot. And with the vegetation as proposed and the 8-foot berm, you cannot see the trucks in the truck bay. So it's an example to show how well that's screened, acknowledging that, of course, some of this landscaping is more mature than it will be on day one, but that is the intent of the ordinance requirement for the berm. So next slide shows a little further view. This is a view from the north lot line at the Bellwether development, looking across that large wetland. And in the very, very distant, you can see the new landscaping and sort of the arrows pointing to where those buildings are. So these renderings were provided by the applicant for the Planning Commission's review. Next slide. Parks and trails. Park dedication will be cash in lieu of land for this site. There is nothing on our parks plan that looks for park itself. There is an on-road county trail planned on County Road 101 within that right-of-way. No date certain when 101 is updated. That's when the county would build that road. There is a Three Rivers Park District, the Diamond Lake Regional Trail that runs from north to south through Corcoran, is planned on the Stieg property to the west, not on this site. This site will have trails on one side of each of those two new public streets that will be stubbed to the west property line and will ultimately connect, as that Stieg property develops, to that Three Rivers Park Trail on the west side and to the 101 trail when that develops on the east side. Additionally, the Northeast District does require a sidewalk on the other side of the